Hey guys, Jay here. So today we're talking about one of the most iconic classic stereo tube amplifier that has ever been brought to market by really any brand. We had the MC275 Mark 1, we had the Mark 2, the Mark 3, the Mark 4, the Mark 5, and the Mark 6. Now we are on the 6th generation of the McIntosh MC275, and I have one with me. I've acquired it through a trade recently, so I did spend my own money on it. And, you know, I do have a bit of a mixed reaction revisiting the MC275 Mark 6. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the McIntosh MC275 Mark 6. I used to, at the very least. When I used to work at the Audio Excellence store as a McIntosh dealer, I did a video with Philip and Adrian talking about the McIntosh MC275 Mark 6, and I absolutely digged it. But it's been 4 years since that video, and I heard the MC275 Mark 6 way before that. So it's been years since I've gone through so many other amplifiers, and there has been amplifiers that come in here that is pushing that performance and fidelity envelope at a much lower price. So I thought it would be very interesting to revisit the McIntosh MC275 Mark 6 and kind of compare it. And we will get to that, but let's give credit where it's due. There's a lot to love about the McIntosh MC275 Mark 6, and it checks off a lot of the boxes for a lot of people. First of all, McIntosh pieces has great resale value in general, but it's also especially true for the MC275 because it's so iconic. The resale value is quite good, and you will likely not lose too much money on it if you were to sell it. And in a few years, maybe it will have collective value like the previous MC275 generations, and maybe you will even make money off of it. But again, this is not an investment advice. There's better investments out there, and I don't think that's a valid reason to buy the McIntosh pieces. But again, it is nice to know that when you walk out of the store, you're not losing automatically 50% of the retail value as it is with most brands. It is both compatible with the KT88 and the 6550 output tubes, and it uses 12AT7 and 12AX7 input tubes, which are all very common tubes that can be acquired. And that's particularly great because that opens up a plethora of tube rolling possibilities to kind of cater the sonic signature improvements to your liking. But again, I did some tube rolling myself, and we'll talk about that in the later part of this video. Build quality is absolutely phenomenal. I think it is really well done, elegant. That LED light though is something of an acquired taste, I would say. I don't like LEDs in my tube amplifiers whatsoever, but green is something that really only McIntosh can pull off, in my opinion. And even then, I find it personally a little bit tacky and just not my taste. And nevertheless, there is a reason, not sure if it's a good one, but there is a reason for that green light. And that is that when it starts up the sequence, it goes from orange lights, which actually I think looks a lot better, to green lights, and that's when you know that the amplifier is now ready to rock and roll. Aside from that, the 6th generation has both balanced and RCA connection, but again, with most tube amplifiers, it goes through a conversion to make it XLR. It's not a true balanced amplifier. So when I was comparing both XLR to RCA, I personally prefer the RCA connection. And remember that the vintage MC275s did not even have balanced connection. So personally, unless you're running long lengths of cables, I think that the RCA sounds mostly better, at least in my space and, you know, with my settings. So if you ask me, I would personally stick with RCA, and that's what I did throughout the review process of this video. And of course, it has the famous transformers from McIntosh, and that is really what makes McIntosh special, is their transformers that they have come up with and have patented throughout the years. And I mean, they slap that on literally everything, even their solid state amplifiers. So that's something that McIntosh is known for, and the MC275 has 3 of them, which is awesome. With the stated output power of 75 watts per channel is plenty of power in my opinion, but if you want better fidelity, more headroom, and better sound quality in general, getting 2 of these will give you 150 watts per channel in bridge mode. And again, going back to that Audio Excellence video 4 years ago, I said the same thing. I very much prefer the sound quality of having 2 of these in bridged mode. However, that doubles the price, and for $13,000, I personally believe that there's a lot of options nowadays, and it's gonna be hard for the McIntosh MC275 Mark VI to justify its price for $13,000 in performance for only 150 watts of power. And that's kind of how I feel about a single unit of the MC275 Mark VI at the time of this video. For $6,500 US at the time of this video, the MC275 is no chump change. And for that kind of money, there has been a lot of amplifiers nowadays that has better fidelity, better sound quality to my ears. For example, the Galleon TSA75 is $1,500 US, and for that kind of money, when I compare it side by side, it completely destroys the McIntosh in my opinion in terms of the overall sound quality and fidelity and the musicality that I'm getting out of it. And you heard me right, $1,500 US, which is a lot less than $6,500. And the Galleon TSA75 is not even a tube amplifier, yet to me it sounds like it has a deeper sound stage and a wider sound stage and better bass, better detail in the mid-range and nuances and the darker background, all the audiophile qualities that you can speak of. Now, to be completely fair, the McIntosh Sound has never been about audiophile performance. Rather, it has always been about that inviting musical sound that people are gravitated towards, that can be listened for long periods of time with no ear fatigue whatsoever. However, that is less true for the MC275 Mark VI. I find that the McIntosh MC275 Mark VI is too modern sounding. It's mostly neutral with a little bit of emphasis in that mid-bass region to where it falls into the category of being slightly warm, then neutral. And you probably heard me say this a lot of times with a lot of amplifiers, since a lot of amplifiers have that sonic quality and character, and the MC275 Mark VI seems to be just one of them now. Again, this is not a concern if you have all McIntosh pieces, all McIntosh system, as I've heard the MC275 Mark VI in an all McIntosh system with a McIntosh preamplifier, especially preferably a tube McIntosh preamplifier, and I find that that sounds way more McIntosh than the MC275 Mark VI when you're starting to mix and match with other components and other brand gear, as I have done in this review. And again, don't get me wrong, it still sounds good when I mix and match. It's just that, again, it just becomes a amplifier that is slightly warm in nature. And when I have something like the Galleon TSA75 or the Bruno Co that I can pair up with a tube preamplifier, for example, then why would I gravitate towards the McIntosh MC275 Mark VI when it doesn't have that enough of that McIntosh sound by itself? And once again, as someone that really loves the house McIntosh sound, that came across as a little bit of a disappointment for me, since it wasn't always like this. When I bought a McIntosh piece and put it in my system, I would get that McIntosh sound. And considering that the MC275 is one of the most iconic McIntosh amplifiers to ever exist, I personally expected it to sound way more McIntosh than it does in the 6th generation. Now, with that out of the way, I do still find that the Mark VI is a good match with a lot of speakers because of its inherent slight warm character that it gives. And like I said, it still has that smoothness that McIntosh Sound is known for. But for better or worse, it has better imaging than before. It's more focused, a bit leaner sounding. It doesn't sound as bold and full as the previous generations of McIntosh. And it doesn't have that holographic sound that I remember McIntosh Sound to have. And the lusciousness, the lucid kind of vivid sound, which some people actually hate, right? They find it smear sounding. But personally, that kind of vivid, inviting sound that the music seems to be flowing everywhere is kind of non-existent with the Mark VI. It's way more focused, way more audiophile. And for audiophiles that's been saying that McIntosh Sound is not about detail retrieval, yes, that's still somewhat true, but it's way more detailed than, you know, previous generations of McIntosh. And I would never thought I would say this with a McIntosh piece, but on certain recordings, it does actually get bright at loud volumes. So it's way more balanced now of a sound signature. It's not totally warm and inviting and only good with jazz, all the stereotypes that people have attached to the McIntosh Sound. That's not so true for the McIntosh MC275 Mark VI, especially in a non-McIntosh system. So is the performance better with the 6th generation of the MC275 in the audiophile sense? Yes, it is. But is it competing with other amplifiers in its price category in the audiophile sense in terms of performance? No, not even close. So hear me out. It works like this in my head. For $6,500, if I want a McIntosh Sound, I have the option of vintage pieces like the MC30 or the MC60 that has collectible value and sounds way more McIntosh than the McIntosh MC275 Mark VI. Hell, even the solid state vintage McIntosh pieces like the 2205 sounded more tubey and more McIntosh to my ears. And if I'm looking to spend that $6,500 for performance, I mean, something like the Galleon TSA75 for $1,500 US is able to compete with it and sound better, at least to my ears. And if I want a really good tube amplifier, then I have something like the Bruno Gold Terra that for about $3 grand completely, in my opinion, demolishes the MC275 Mark VI in terms of that tubiness sound that I'm looking for in tube amplifiers. Now, on a brighter note, the real cool thing is that you can do tube rolling with the MC275 Mark VI to get to that more McIntosh sound that you're looking for, or I should say I'm looking for. And I found success in trying different new old stock tubes. I went through various different ones, but I landed on the Brimar new old stock tubes, as well as the new Prisvane Horizon series tubes, which are rather inexpensive tubes, so that's great. And I tried both the 6550 output tubes as well as the KT88 tubes from Prisvane Horizon series. And I personally found that the 6550 output tubes were more to my liking in terms of that McIntosh sound that I was looking for. A little bit more luscious, a little bit more holographic, a little bit more soundstage depth, and a little bit more smoothness. You know, that McIntosh sound I'm looking for, it was a little bit more in that direction. While the KT88 seem to have more robust bass and more clarity, more transparency, so not exactly that McIntosh sound that I was looking for, but nevertheless, it was still an upgrade from the stock tubes. So the good thing is that the MC275 Mark VI responds really well to tube rolling, and it does respond quite well to tube changes. But I digress. I feel like it shouldn't take this time and effort and tube rolling and changing tubes to get to that McIntosh sound. I feel like it should sound like a McIntosh piece straight out of the box with the stock tubes. But once again, it responds well to tubes, so that's a good thing. I'll link to some of the tubes that I used to get to that McIntosh sound that I was looking for in the description below for you to check out. And one more thing on the tube rolling possibilities of the MC275. MC275 has been around for a very long time, and even the 6th generation has been around for a few years. So if you go on the forums or if you just search on the internet on the tube rolling possibilities of the MC275 Mark VI, you're gonna find a plethora of tube recommendations and plethora of possibilities of tube rolling. So you don't have to just take my recommendations for it. You can find the tubes that works for you and try and have some fun tube rolling with the MC275 Mark VI that meets your expectations and the sound quality you're looking for. Now, on the last note about speaker pairing with the MC275 Mark VI, with majority of McIntosh pieces, and the MC275 Mark VI is no exception here, it's really a good to a excellent match with most of the speakers out there. Now, I personally find that when I was trying plethora of different speakers, from horn speakers like the Joseph Crowley design that I just reviewed, to big towers like the Crescendo speakers that I reviewed recently as well as small towers like the Totem Bison Twin Towers, or a bookshelf speaker, a classic in its own right, like the Bucard S400 Mark II, and a dual concentric design like the KEF LS50 Meta as well. I found that all of them sounded really great, with the exception of the KEF LS50 Meta, with me wanting a little bit more headroom, and I felt like it needed a little bit more power than the MC275 could offer. But majority of the time, as with most McIntosh pieces, the MC275 Mark VI, not being an exception, is going to sound good with majority of speakers. And that's one thing about McIntosh pieces that I really like. That can't be said about a lot of the amplifiers that lean towards the warmer side like the MC75 Mark VI does. And what I mean by that is that McIntosh pieces tend to sound good even with warmer sounding gear, even though you may think, oh, that may be a little bit too warm of a combination together, they tend to sound still really good. For example, Sonos Faber speakers sound really good even though I find majority of their speakers to be on the warmer side of neutral. marry that with McIntosh, they sound really good together, and I find Sonos Faber to be one of the most excellent matches with McIntosh pieces. But that's also can be said about B&W with McIntosh, Focal with McIntosh, you name it. And yes, there are amplifiers out there in that $6,500 price tag that will destroy the MC275 Mark VI in terms of performance, but those are not always going to sound great with every speaker, while McIntosh seems to be very forgiving, not only in its sound signature, but in its pairing. I find that it's a good match. It's hard to go wrong with a McIntosh piece, as people say, and there's some truth to that. So that concludes my experience revisiting the McIntosh MC275 Mark VI in a few years, and honestly, I thought I would be a lot more impressed with it than I really was, or wasn't, I should say. And I really hope that this is not a discouragement for anyone looking to get a McIntosh piece. Like I said, it's a timeless classic piece. And yes, of course, you're paying for the brand name, the looks, and all that kind of stuff. But the resale value speaks for that. And most people buying McIntosh know that they're paying for the brand name as well. It's just that this channel has always been about my journey and my take on things. And for me, just looking at the sound quality alone, unless I have the MC275 as a collectible piece that I look once in a while and pat it, for me, for sound quality alone, I just feel like it doesn't match up to the $6,500 price tag, both in the realm of its own McIntosh sound, as well as, pure audiophile performance. So it's neither here or there, and that's kind of my main takeaway from this, and it's not something that I would personally buy for my own musical enjoyment. So that's all I have to say. Anyways, if this video was helpful, entertaining, any of the above, please click the like button. It does help my channel out greatly. It doesn't cost you anything, and maybe perhaps it will make the MC275 more McIntosh sounding in the next generation. Jokes aside, make sure to subscribe as well, and I'll see you guys on my next journey. Until next time.